I think I achieved a number of things, both on behalf of Gibraltar, and remember, I was also representing other overseas territories who have a voice. Some very different problems to ours, particularly they're on the front line of climate change, those in the Caribbean, low-lying islands and so on, they have different issues. But I think we achieved a lot from the point of view of Gibraltar. I think we put ourselves on the map, particularly with the pledge on education, which was extremely well received. And I think we also managed to establish some contacts, up-to-date contacts on different developments, green technologies, green finance. That was very, very useful. As a whole, I'm hopeful that this COP will be more successful than the last one. There are still things to be ironed out between today and tomorrow. I was very impressed at the very high commitment from the private sector, who are driving a lot of change, particularly technological change, and are now almost pushing the governments, which is almost a reversal of what used to be the case. So it's not going to be the solution to everything, but I think it's probably much better than I feared it was going to be.
Okay, well, your climate change pledge signed with the other OTs commits to a number of actions, and the first of these is to protect our fisheries. So can you tell us, how do you propose to do that, particularly when it comes to illegal Spanish fishing, which has been a historic problem in this area?
Okay, remember this pledge is a wide-ranging overseas territories one, and the overseas territories include the Falkland Islands, for example, which have a big fishing industry. We don't. And they're looking at protecting theirs against perhaps other states, and also guaranteeing their markets with the loss of the EU market. So they have their own issues. As far as our own question is concerned, it's a much smaller scale than some of the larger ones, particularly in the South Atlantic. But we continue to be out there. We continue to enforce as much as we are able to. Our laws are there for all to see. And even though there are people who don't realize the amount of work that the Environmental Protection Unit does out at sea, I can assure you that they do a lot of work, and they are scaling it down in a big way.
But in terms of pledging and actions, what specific actions, other than the ones that you're already doing, do you pledge to commit to?
Well, to continue what we're doing, to continue to protect our waters and to enforce it. I think one important thing in the Gibraltar point of view is how much marine life is actually flourishing. We've never had otters in our harbour before. We haven't had ospreys resident in Gibraltar for decades. So that is a reflection of improving quality of marine life. It's not as I'm never satisfied, but I think we are achieving a lot, and obviously we have to remain vigilant. But the pledge, remember, was largely driven by other overseas territories who have a lot more at stake. Some of the economies, Tristan's economy depends largely on the exportation of lobsters, for example, and it's all the overseas territories who together make that pledge.
But if we're dealing with such a broad church when it comes to overseas territories, how does Gibraltar actually fit in and benefit from this pledge?
Well, it has to be. The overseas territories are very different. There are highly populated ones like Bermuda, Gibraltar, densely populated, to completely unpopulated ones like South Georgia. And we have to represent them all. And therefore there has to be, I think there's strength in our diversity, because we are all there defending our own interests, but also looking at the collective and learning from each other's experience.
So in terms of tackling plastic pollution, again, is that a continuation of the same thing or different actions?
Well, our laws are in place. We are tightening up our laws. We will continue to encourage a reduction in the use of single-use plastic and encourage recycling. We have recycling campaigns that are already starting and will be continuing, and we have other things we want to do to ensure there's more recycling in Gibraltar so that less plastic gets into the sea. But do remember, again, some of the other overseas territories are in areas of large oceans which accumulate a lot of plastic, and obviously it's very important for them as well.
And how will all of this be monitored among the OTs?
Well, we are increasingly working together. I chair the Environment Ministers' Council. We are now meeting more regularly virtually, not just because of COVID, but because we are so far away. A number of us were present at COP, and we have generated a lot of common ground there, joint meetings with the ministers looking after particularly environmental areas, because even though we're all very different, when it comes to climate change and to environment, we are all speaking with one voice.
Minister, on Viewpoint last week, you said you would publish the climate change strategy during COP26. It hasn't been published yet. What's happening with that?
Well, it's being updated as we speak. COP26 doesn't finish until tomorrow. I have brought back some new material from COP26, some things that are being emphasized now, which weren't just a year ago or 2 years ago in COP25, and therefore we're refining it and we're hoping to meet our deadline.